to draw a cafe. I am no stranger to drawing cafes. I've drawn 3 cafes in the past. They're very sprawling. Well, very sprawling? That's not the way you say it. They're very detailed and they used to be very large, but I did this one a bit smaller because I wanted it to be a tiny bit quainter. I typically start by searching up a reference image on either Google or DuckDuckGo. Today I used both. I only did footage of the DuckDuckGo one. I had 4 images to choose from. Most of them are pictures of the outside of the cafe when I want the inside. A lot of these pictures are cafes that I've drawn in the past, and a lot of them are just not the best to draw. I ended up choosing one that had very cozy looking lights that I really like. That's the main reason I chose this one. I imported it into Fire Alpaca. The oranges made it look a tiny bit too homey, so I decided immediately to change it to red. And then I started checking out the shading, checking out which way all the lights come from, so that I could apply it to the person in the center. I typically add at least 3 people, but today I wanted it to be just a small addition. So 1 person, 1 girl in the middle of the cafe, sitting by herself, drinking coffee. That seems like a very casual morning, doesn't it? I was a bit concerned about the background because I tend to not draw the outside of the cafe, any details on the outside of the cafe when I'm making the cafe, but the windows turned out to be rather simple in the finished product. I actually decided to just leave it at the window shines because that made, gosh, time to draw. I'm interrupting myself, aren't I? This is why I should use my preset video chapters. There are video chapters in this video, which is different. Yeah. This is very boring, isn't it? My ruler had a nick in it. And that made the line... That's the first disaster. It made the line wonky. There are a lot of disasters in this video. One of the major disasters that you're gonna see in a moment is that my video editor decides to just repeat clips for no reason. I started with a random lamp, first of all, because it's nice to hype yourself up by using something that you know will look good. Using tiny little strokes of the pencil, you can give it a brushed metal effect that you can't really get with other mediums. The chairs are very detailed, but I messed up most of them. It's mostly the top left chair that I actually did right. As you can see in the original version, the tables aren't that kind of wood, but I like having that detailed spiral, and it's easy to get reference for that because my ceiling right now is wooden. Whenever I reach my hand across the screen, that's me checking my reference images. Remember always to check your reference image when you're working from reference. Well, when you're working from reference as referencey as that. You know what I mean. When we were doing still life in art class, my art teacher told us that we were focusing too much on our drawings instead of the actual thing, which made it a bit, yeah, it still looks aesthetically pleasing, but it's not as accurate. So I took that to heart. I tend to put just as much thought into looking at the reference image as looking at my own artwork, because some things might just not make sense. I decided to take out most of the chairs, half because of COVID-19 protocols and half because, well, that's just too many chairs for me to want to draw. the background sort of gets simpler as it goes on. As you can see, the lamp gets tinier, the everything gets less detailed. That's why it's very important for the foreground chairs for me to put a thicker lined background, as well as to set it apart from other lines, because this is a very line heavy drawing, especially when it wasn't colored. Because the background has single lines, so the foreground should have thicker dynamic lines. The lights were a cross between another cafe that I saw and this one, because I noticed that those ceiling lights just didn't work. They were a bit too half modern. I liked the other lights, but not those top fans. Those were just too much for me, so I changed them to metal balls. This is testing ink grip. That's making tiny little lines of different variations and then putting it on top of watercolor pencil and swirling around with your finger and a bit of water to make sure that the ink will stay. That's using the same ink from the same pen. And as you can see, it moved a tiny bit, but I associate that with the big splotch of black, which makes me believe that it's not the amount of lines that would ruin it. It would more be the black areas, which just meant that I could go along with painting. I just had to be careful. It's important to test your ink grip, because sometimes it's better to just leave it as an ink illustration on watercolor paper if you know that it's going to leak and destroy everything. One thing I don't like about this is the simplification of the flowers. The flowers are just too simple for me. I don't know what else to say. The chairs there are a bit too lean for me. I should probably not point out my gripes with it, because that would make you see them as well, and I don't think that you would have seen it. Would you have seen it? You'd most likely have seen it. I put a chair at the far back because I didn't want to draw the other chairs, but then I quickly realized off camera that only made the foreshortening of the scene a bit confusing, because when you put nothing in the middle, you're going to think that what is in between the two is the true middle, and that doesn't make sense in the long run, because that's not close enough to either side. If you know what I mean, do you know what I mean? I'm probably gonna have to explain it somewhere else. Everything else is just simple, trying my hardest to match the reference image and using lines to make sure that you can add dimension. Using cross-hatching. Everything is done with lines in this. Using cross-hatching to add dimensions. I'm procrastinating on doing the roof rafters, the top of that, because if you draw those joints badly, then it's going to mess up the whole thing. As you can see, the camera is zooming in and out uncontrollably. I can't fix that, I'm sorry. However, as you can see, I put the paper closer to the camera and my face so that I could see more clearly where to do every single wooden beam of the rafter, because it's so hard to do. You can mess it up so badly, and I did mess it up, but it's not as badly as I could have. Very soon you're gonna see a visitor, I believe, in just a few seconds. this is just adding details around, because even when I'm doing the rafters, I'm procrastinating on doing the rafters. I missed out a few beams on the reference image somehow, simply because I focused more on those. Oh, wow, here's the visitor. Look at her! When I'm painting, Amber decides to get in a box. Hi, Amber.
Good cat, Amber.
Say bye, Amber. Of course, when I'm not anticipating the visitor, that's when the visitor part comes. I apologize. The horizontal rafters, I focused on those instead of the vertical rafters, which made me miss out a few vertical rafters. Meanwhile, I messed up on the shading of another rafter, which made me have to deepen it. I hope you don't see that part, because the shading of that one is kinda weird. But at least I only made one major mistake with the roof. That's my major accomplishment with this. Now it's time to color match, and then it's time to paint. I started first by painting extremely light browns. I tried to do a semi-layering because watercolor is all about layering. But I'm typically way too lazy to layer a lot. I mixed very, very, very light brown and very, very, very light red, and that kind of made me a bit anxious that the red would turn out as pink, because that's definitely not what I was aiming for. But thankfully it turned out mostly as red. What do you guys think? Because as you can see here, the well, on camera, well, not right now because you can't see anything right now, the everything really looks more faded. I was again aiming for layering things so that there would be a variation, even though it would be mainly two colors. I wanted it to be a homey color scheme, but I wanted the pop to be with red, because red makes things look a lot more sophisticated. But then my red decided to do this. No! It decided to spell. There we go. There we go. Oh. Now how do you get rid of that now? Make it look intentional? Do I just do I try to erase it? I'm gonna try to erase it, and if it doesn't work, then I'm going to try to make it look intentional. Oh dear. Oh me. Oh my. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Haha! That was my live reaction to the drama before I tried to fix it. To no avail, of course. It just looks like that. So I decided to pretend that the disaster wasn't there before moving on to layering up the reds and the browns. I was a tiny bit and by a tiny bit I mean a lot, bummed out, so I didn't include a ton of the process, which includes adding greens which complement the reds, as well as adding the yellow in crayon, because when something like that happens, I was just a lot bummed. I wanted it to be a natural white background, but I ended up having to cut it out completely and tape it onto another piece of paper. It still looks good, but it could have been better. But that's fine. Let's not cry over spilled milk or spilled paint or spilled pseudo blood. The yellow helped tie it together though, which is something that I really liked since I was debating not doing it at all. Again, because I was bummed that my border was completely destroyed. All in all, this project was a half success. Again, I really wanted it to be a natural white border, but c'est la vie. I'll take whatever I get. And this is a pretty cool cafe. And it's a pretty cool addition to my sketchbook as well. My God dog. the thing is called a portfolio. Gosh, it's a thing. It's a folder. I know words. I keep messing up this audio recording. I have done so many takes. But thankfully this audio recording will stop. As will this video. Bye bye.